there. After Miss Harvey's death, Martin went back to live with his mother, whilst his father looked after the farm that his son had inherited. It was around this time that his father, Maurice Bryant, tried to buy a small bed and breakfast near Port Arthur. However, before he could get his finances in order, the building was bought by another couple, David and Nolene Martin. Martin tried to buy the business off of the couple, but they refused. In the months that followed, his father, Maurice Bryant, fell into a deep depression, which he often blamed Martin for. And on the 16th of August, 1993, divers found his body in the lake of the property with a diving weight belt around his neck. This would later prove to be one of the big things that pushed Martin over the edge. The death was ruled as a suicide, although there are those who believe that Martin actually killed his father so that he was able to access his money, which his father had financial guardianship over. In the aftermath of his father's death, Martin inherited his $550,000, which Miss Harvey had left for him, as well as $250,000 from his father. Now that he was alone, Martin's unusual and eccentric personality started showing through more and more. He was often seen sporting a gray linen suit, a cravat, lizard skin shoes, and a Panama hat, and would try to talk to random strangers, telling them that he had a well-paying career. As his mental health declined and his need for companionship grew, Martin would often go on multiple trips overseas just so that he could talk to people on the plane. Forced to be polite, people would have to talk to him. However, they still felt that he was incredibly creepy. But this was not enough to satisfy his dire need for friends, and his mental health got even worse. In late 1995, Martin became suicidal after deciding that he had had enough. "I just felt more people were against me. When I tried to be friendly toward them, they just walked away," he said in an interview. In his loneliness, Martin quickly turned to alcohol, and in the 6 months prior to the Port Arthur massacre, his consumption increased exponentially. According to Martin, he first thought of the plan for Port Arthur 4 to 12 weeks before it took place, and based it off the Dunblane Massacre, which had happened in Scotland, UK, only 1 month prior to Martin's attack. At some point during the years leading up to the horrendous attack, Martin had managed to legally buy himself an AR-10 semi-automatic rifle, an AR-15 rifle, an L1A1 self-loading battle rifle, and a USAS-12 automatic shotgun. He also visited the Port Arthur historic site multiple times in the months leading up to the tragic event and bought a large sports bag, which he said needed to be strong enough to hold large amounts of ammunition. It seemed that Martin was determined to go through with his plan. On the 28th of April, 1996, Martin put his plan into action. He was unusually awoken at 6 a.m. by his alarm clock. During interviews after the massacre, his girlfriend of the time and his remaining family said that it was strange, as he had never used the alarm clock before. At around 9:45 a.m., after his girlfriend had left for the day, Martin left his home and headed toward Port Arthur, along with all of his weapons and his bag full of ammo. By 11:45 a.m., he had arrived at the Seascape Bed and Breakfast, the very one that his father had been unable to buy. Martin apparently believed that the owners, the Martins, had deliberately bought the property to hurt his family and blamed them for his father's depression, which ultimately led to his death. An act he decided that they would pay for with their lives. Martin fatally shot the Martins in the guest room of their house before making his way to Port Arthur. They were the first two victims of his devastating massacre. Once at Port Arthur, Martin went into the Broad Arrow Cafe, carrying his large blue sports bag. He ordered a meal and made small talk with the tourists in the small shop, acting as if he was just another visitor on a day out. Unfortunately, his plans were much more sinister. After finishing his meal, Martin moved toward the back of the cafe, which had around 60 to 70 guests in it at the time, and set up a video camera on an empty table. He then took out his AR-15 semi-automatic rifle and started firing into the crowd of innocent people. Within only 15 seconds, the cold-blooded killer had fired 17 shots, killing 12 people and injuring another 10. Martin then walked toward the gift shop, where people had tried to hide, and fired 12 more times, killing another 8 people and wounding 2 more.
That's a shotgun.
Sound like a trail.
See that man running there? Around past the gun building that's here.
Outside of the cafe, a group of people had gathered, believing the gunshots to be part of a reenactment play. Martin took this opportunity to refill his ammo and leave the cafe, only to callously shoot into the crowd in the car park.
There's somebody going crazy shooting people here. There he is, he's over there. I can't believe it.
Martin then got into his car and drove away, leaving 4 more people dead and 6 more injured. Only 300 meters down the road, 36-year-old Nanette Meekark was walking with her 2 daughters, 6-year-old Alana Meekark and 3-year-old Madeline Meekark. Martin saw the family as he drove and pulled over. Not knowing what had just happened down the port, Nanette had no idea how dangerous the man was. In the blink of an eye, Martin shot and killed Nanette and Madeline, who she was carrying in her arms. Alana tried to run away, however, in an act of true heartlessness, Martin chased after her and killed her with a single shot. Continuing with his rampage, Martin stole a gold BMW after killing all 4 of its occupants. He then drove a short distance down the road and pulled up alongside a white Toyota with a couple inside. He took out one of his weapons and ordered the male occupant of the car to get into the boot of the BMW, before then shooting and killing the female driver. At around 2:10 in the afternoon, the mass murderer returned to the Seascape guest house, set the stolen car on fire, and took his hostage inside, where the bodies of the Martins still lay. During this time, 2 police officers had been called about the roadside murders. Tried to approach Martin, however, he opened fire on them, causing them to hide in a ditch and become pinned down. It wasn't until around 9 p.m. that a special operations group of the Tasmania police team arrived on the scene. They rescued the pinned down officers, and for the next 18 hours, a tense standoff between Martin and the police took place. At first, the police tried to negotiate with the killer, but it was cut short when the battery on Martin's phone ran out. His only demand had been that he wanted to be transported to an airport in an army helicopter. During negotiations, Martin ended up killing his hostage, bringing the total number of people killed in his monstrous rampage to 35, whilst a further 23 were injured. The next morning, in a last-ditch attempt to escape, Martin set fire to the guest house and tried to get away amidst the confusion. This didn't work, and instead, the killer was captured and taken to Royal Hobart Hospital to have his burns treated, which he received in the fire. He was kept under heavy guard the entire time. After his arrest, Martin was held in custody without the chance of bail. Whilst he was awaiting trial, he was examined by court-appointed psychiatrist Ian Sale, who believed that Martin possibly suffered from a mixture of conduct disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity, and Asperger's syndrome. Not that that excused the horror that he had just committed. Eventually, Martin was judged fit to stand trial, which happened on the 7th of November, 1996. Initially, the mass murderer pleaded not guilty, but his court-appointed lawyer, John Avery, later convinced him to change his mind and plead guilty to all charges. 2 weeks later, Martin was given 35 consecutive life sentences, one for each victim killed in his attack. He was also given an additional 1,652 years in prison for attempted murder and grievous physical harm to numerous people. The sentence was issued with no chance of parole, the first of its kind. So it's safe to say that he's never getting out. Throughout his imprisonment, the once formidable killer attempted to take his own life on 8 separate occasions. The latest being in 2007, when he tried to slit his own throat with a razor blade, forcing him to be briefly hospitalized before being returned to prison. In recent exclusive interviews, Martin has been documented to have become severely overweight as he refused to join in on exercise in the prison courtyard. He has also been noted to have declined even more mentally, to the point where he is willing to trade sexual favors for chocolate. As of 2021, the unremorseful mass murderer is being housed in the maximum security Risdon prison. Because of the weapons that Martin used in the massacre, along with the fact that he was able to legally and easily purchase the guns despite his history of violence, the Australian government decided that some serious reforms were needed in terms of their gun laws. The legal ownership and use of self-loading rifles, self-loading shotguns, and pump-action shotguns were either banned or heavily restricted. And a buyback scheme was initiated in which over 643,000 firearms were handed back, which cost the government around $350 million. Since the Port Arthur massacre, there have been many conspiracy theories behind what actually happened that day. Some people believe that it was a setup by the Australian government so that they could enact stricter gun laws, as there had been a number of mass shootings before the Port Arthur one took place. Others believe that Martin wasn't actually the shooter, as witness descriptions